Welcome into the Commanders Report by Chat Sports, presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and on today's show, Brandon Aiyuk has called out the San Francisco 49ers yet again. Going to be breaking down BA's latest comments at the top of today's show. Then the Commanders have now been linked to edge rusher for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Alex Highsmith, in recent trade rumors. Going to be breaking down whether or not that's a realistic possibility for this team this year. And then we got some team news at the end of today's show that you're not going to want to miss, so make sure you guys stick around to the end of today's show. But Saturday, guys, Cassie and I actually got married in Minnesota. Big shout out to my lovely bride. It was a fantastic weekend, a beautiful weekend. So thank you to producer Ponzi for helping us out with the channel over the weekend. And of course, we are back in studio and ready to get ready for a very pivotal 2026 Washington Commanders season. But I have a little bit of an ask for you guys. Can we get 1,000 likes for my bride, Cassie, today? I promised her that I would try to get her 1,000 likes today in celebration of our wedding. So if you guys want to help out the channel today and help me kind of deliver a little bit of a wedding present here to Cassie, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon to kick off today's show. All right, so now let's start with our top story here today, which is that Commanders wide receiver target Brandon Aiyuk unleashed yet another tirade on the 49ers on his Instagram account here just last night. Of course, he had another one on Saturday. We'll get into that here in a second, but this is what Brandon Aiyuk had to say. You want to know why the 49ers are really mad, though? They're mad because they're stupid, dumb. They mad that they paid me $50 million in 8 months and then voided my guarantees, and I'm about to be on a new team. They're mad at themselves for real. They're acting like they're mad at me, but they're stupid-ass mad at themselves. So obviously, Brandon Aiyuk is not very happy with the San Francisco 49ers. Of course, he is under contract with the Niners right now, and frankly, the Commanders, or the 49ers, I should say, can hold on to him in really perpetuity until August 31st. He doesn't have any new money kind of adding on to his contract until September 1st and a massive roster bonus this year. So the 49ers, if they want to, can hold him until August 31st, and Aiyuk is kind of figuring that out here, and he is going really balls to the wall against the San Francisco 49ers on social media in a very public way right now. And this, of course, came after his previous tirade on Saturday where he posted himself in a couple of photos in Commanders hats and then said this in a video. We dealing with them like kids when we don't get picked on the basketball game at the court, but they the ones that brought the ball. So they're like, all right, you don't want to pick me? I'm taking my ball. I'm going home. Ass boys, little ass boys. Or like when the kid has this one toy, but he don't really know how to use it correctly, so somebody else about to pick it up and play with it, and they're like, yeah, this shit litty, ass boy, little ass boy. Man, stop running from the belt. The belt is coming. You scared. They're scared. The truth is they're scared. They know how I get. What they're not going to say is BA suck at football because they know how I get. And they're running from that belt that's on the way. It's inevitable. It's coming. Stop running. Stop being a female dog. So Aiyuk definitely unhappy with the San Francisco 49ers and trying to publicly shame them, pressure them, whatever you guys want to call it, into having them release him so that he can sign with the Washington Commanders, where he can join forces with, of course, his buddy Jaden Daniels here in D.C. But I got to tell you, man, this is not a good look for Brandon Aiyuk. All right, I know that he is frustrated, and I know he wants to join his new team sooner rather than later, and he's pissed off at the 49ers, but this is not the way that you should be presenting yourself in a public way. Frankly, he sounds a lot like Antonio Brown starting in that season where, of course, he got traded from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Las Vegas Raiders, didn't even play a single down for the Raiders because he made such a stink of things publicly, and then, of course, he had a bunch of different things with the New England Patriots and then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the years to come, and then he was pretty much, blacklisted from the National Football League because he just couldn't behave himself. And, I think that the Washington Commanders are setting themselves up for failure here. Like, relying on this player, in my opinion, is a mistake. Not only to trust him to behave himself and not to do these public tirades against the Washington Commanders, but also he's coming off, a year and a half without playing any football, right? Like, he's somebody that is coming off a major knee injury that had to completely get, rebuilt, essentially. He's 2 years older than last time we saw him on an NFL football field. And on top of that, he's doing all this weird stuff on social media. Like, this is just not somebody that you can trust to be your wide receiver, too, heading into an NFL football season. And in my opinion, guys, at this point, I would rather just sign Stefon Diggs in free agency. Sure, he'd probably be a lot more expensive than a Brandon Aiyuk would be at this point. But, he'd be worth it to me. And then you could also trade for Kayshon Boutte, who had a really good season last year. It probably would only cost you, an earlier mid-day 3 draft pick. And, guys, if Brian Thomas Jr. is still available, I'd explore that as a trade option as well. He has experience playing with Jaden Daniels. So does Kayshon Boutte. And my whole take on the situation, guys, is that if Washington wants to bring in Brandon Aiyuk at this point, it should be more as a wide receiver 3 that you're not necessarily banking on to be a really good player for you, as opposed to a wide receiver 2 that you are saying, you better be good this year or our wide receiver room is going to not be so great heading into the 2026 season. So what do you guys think is going to be the next wide receiver addition here in Washington? Type BA if you think it's going to be Brandon Aiyuk. Type SD if it's going to be Stefon Diggs. Type KB for Kayshon Boutte. Or BTJ if you think Brian Thomas Jr., a blockbuster trade, is going to come out of nowhere. While you give me your answer down there in the comment section, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Prize Picks, which is America's #1 sports picks app. The finals are now in full swing, and I'm going to be putting in a Prize Picks lineup for every game of Spurs versus Knicks this year. The app is super easy to use. You just pick more than or less than on a few player stat projections and then lock in your lineup. And, of course, the World Cup is starting up here soon, so you guys can actually get a max discount on Cesar Montes here from Mexico, so you guys can get the more on passes for him, which is essentially a free play. They call it a max discount, so you guys can take a look here at a potential lineup here for the World Cup. I'm taking the more on Fernandez here, the more on Mbappe, and the more on, of course, Messi. So if you guys want to get in on the action here, download the Prize Picks app today and use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with our friends at Prize Picks. Click the link in the comments and description to download the app today. And a big thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring the Commanders Report. Now shifting our focus here to a different position that the Commanders could be looking to trade for here, as Jason Leconfora says that his sources are linking edge rusher Alex Highsmith of the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Washington Commanders, as the Pittsburgh Steelers has very recently extended Nick Herbig, their stud edge rusher. But other teams mentioned in this article from Canfora were the Philadelphia Eagles, the Buffalo Bills, and the San Francisco 49ers, some other teams that are in win-now mode at this point and could use some really great veteran edge help that Alex Highsmith could certainly provide to those football teams. And, of course, like I just mentioned, the Pittsburgh Steelers just gave an edge rusher, not named TJ Watt, a 4-year, $100 million extension. Nick Herbig, in my opinion, one of the more underrated edge rushers in football. The Steelers clearly agree, giving him that big-time contract, and you don't give a guy that kind of contract unless you expect him to be a starter long-term in their defense. And then last year, Pittsburgh gave TJ Watt a massive 3-year, $123 million extension. And the Steelers have said publicly that they want Watt to be a one-helmet player. It's an extremely loyal franchise that, frankly, probably holds on to their legendary players a little bit too long because they want their legendary players to just play for one team. So they end up overpaying for their aging players more often than not. But because of those two things, guys, and Watt and Highsmith being locked up long-term, it just feels like Highsmith will eventually be traded. But the question that everyone's asking, will that be this year or will that be next year that the Pittsburgh Steelers unload Alex Highsmith? And listen, man, if you could add Alex Highsmith, he is an incredibly underrated edge rusher, one of the most underrated in the game, in my opinion, just because he lives in TJ Watt's shadow. But you guys can take a look at all the stats and everything that he has done in his time as a Pittsburgh Steeler, and this guy has been putting up awesome production here for years. He had 14 and a half sacks back in 2022. He's dealt with some injuries. He's never, had a complete full season since 2023. But He put up 9.5 sacks last year. I believe that led the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. Watt only had 7. So, this is somebody that, has definitely put up a lot of production, whether it's TFLs, whether it's sacks, whether it's forced fumbles. Alex Highsmith can also go out into coverage as well. It's one of the reasons why the Steelers love him as a true 3-4 outside linebacker and why he could be an excellent fit inside Durante Jones's defense here in Washington. And then last year, you could make an argument, Alex Highsmith was the Pittsburgh Steelers' best pass rusher. You take a look at these pressure stats here in terms of their pressure rate and quick pressure rate with their top 3 edge rushers. Nick Herbig, who just got 4 years, $100 million per season, couldn't match Alex Highsmith's numbers in both of these categories. So Highsmith is still a really good football player. Plus, if you trade for him this year, he still has 2 years left on one of the better value contracts in the National Football League at this current point in time. I mean, like the cap hits that the Washington Commanders would be taking on here if they end up trading for Alex Highsmith, it's just $14.5 million for a low-end number 1 edge rusher. That's an excellent number right there to pay if you're the Commanders. And then next year, $15.5 million. Now, he would probably be looking for a contract extension next offseason if you do trade for him, but you do get that benefit of only having to pay him $14.5 million this year if you're able to pull off a trade this offseason. However, I kind of doubt that Washington is going to trade for him this year. I just don't really see this as a realistic possibility, if I'm being completely honest with you guys. First of all, I don't think Pittsburgh is going to be trading him this year. They're in win-now mode, just like the Washington Commanders are, and I believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers are probably going to move forward trying to have that 3-headed monster at the edge rusher position for one more season because they can afford it. Nick Herbig's contract this year, his cap hit is like less than $5 million, right? So while you can still have TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig on the same team, I think it makes sense for them to ride with those 3 players for one more season. And then second of all, I'm not sure if Washington would do this year, especially for a certain price tag. I think the Steelers would want at least a second-round pick for Highsmith this year, or next year, I should say, next year's NFL draft. I'm not sure if Washington's really in the business of giving up high draft picks, especially because next year's draft is in Washington, D.C. And right now, the edge rusher room, I think, is in a spot that they feel pretty good with, right? You got Odafe Owe, who they bring in for $100 million in their own right. You still got Dorrance Armstrong, who was one of the most efficient edge rushers in football before he got injured last year. People forget about how good Dorrance Armstrong was to start last season. Then you bring in Kayvon Chaisson, who had, a number of sacks last year as a designated pass rusher on a team that made the Super Bowl. You just drafted Joshua Josephs, who they really like. Charles Omenihu is here. So I think that they like their edge rusher situation right now. But if you're wondering what it's going to take to get Alex Highsmith here, that's assuming the Steelers are open to trading him. I think it's going to cost a second-round pick next year and an edge rusher to take Highsmith's spot in that edge rusher room in Pittsburgh. So Kayvon Chaisson, you just signed him in free agency, but there's no rule saying that you can't trade a player that you just signed in free agency. There is a 30-day latency period that you can't trade players that you sign in free agency, but that has passed. So Kayvon Chaisson is eligible to be traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers here. So 2027 second-round pick and Kayvon Chaisson in exchange for Alex Highsmith, I think would be the price tag here. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Would you accept this trade if you were the Washington Commanders and bringing in one of the better 3-4 outside linebackers in the game to Pittsburgh on a value contract? Type A if you would accept this deal, or type D if you would decline it. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Now, at the beginning of the show here, I did promise some huge team news, and I am definitely going to deliver on that right now here. Guys, say hello to the Commanders' new team dog. We now have a mascot. His name is TJ. He is 12 weeks old. And he has that little Commanders toy right there. He is so freaking cute, man. I can't wait to see him at Northwest Stadium this year. But they're actually training him to be a helper dog for veterans. So that is really, really cool. Looking forward to seeing TJ around Commanders practices and games this year. All right, that'll be it for today's edition of Commanders News and Rumors. Thank you guys so much for joining me here today. Tomorrow we're going to have another slate of Commanders News and Rumors as Commanders OTAs continue on in Ashburn. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, go raise some hail.